All right, hey everyone, how you doing? Really excited to be here today to talk to you all, along with our panel here, about DevOps and the modern infrastructure. I'm joined by three long-term practitioners in this space across different industries. They're going to share some of their challenges and learnings today in the GitOps adoption space, especially as systems grow in scale and complexity. Before I introduce the panel though, I'd like to have a little introduction from you all. So by a show of hands, how many folks are using Kubernetes today? Awesome. And how many of those using Kubernetes are also using GitOps to manage those deployments in your Kubernetes environments? Awesome, so I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and start with introductions of the panel today. And because roles vary slightly across different companies, I am going to ask our panelists to share a little bit of detail about exactly what their role means in their specific industry. So for our panelists here, if you could just share with me your name, your title, exactly what that title means day to day for your expectations, and then also how long you've been doing Kubernetes and GitOps adoption. So we'll go ahead and start with Krzystof here.
Sure, hi. So I'm Krzystof, I'm a product owner in company Dance by Sirona. We are on the market for over 35 years, and in the past we were producing like all kind of software for the dentistry, so we are heavily regulated. And from about 4 years, we joined the 24/7 family in the CloudOps. We are utilizing GitOps for many years. I think it's over 20 right now. So we started with SVN, Git, Plastic Team, so all over kind of CI/CD that you know from the market. And in my day-to-day job, from about 12 years, I simplify, standardize, automate the pipelines. I simplify it because you can imagine if we have multiple locations around the world, we have multiple different approaches, multiple approvals, workflows, so we try to homogenize them, centralize them, and enable innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Krzystof. Yousef?
Yep, so I'm Yousef. I'm a senior staff engineer at Cowbell. Cowbell is a cybersecurity insurance provider, and so we mainly focus on small businesses, you know, your mom and pop stores, painters, you know, one-man bands, the folks who kind of get left behind in sort of the big tech world, where they also have the same cybersecurity problems as all of the big companies, but not necessarily the budgets for huge internal cybersecurity teams. My day-to-day role focuses on everything from code commit all the way through to production. So all of the pipelines, the infrastructure, the entire cloud estate. For me, it's getting out of the way of engineers and just letting them do the great work that they do, building in tools and processes so that they can get on with shipping a product, but also being able to do that safely and, you know, with guardrails, but, you know, also being able to do it quickly.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Hong.
Yeah, so my name is Hong. Sorry, I cannot hear myself. It's like tricky here. So I have been working on the Argo project for 10 years. So I'm the original creator of the Argo. So kind of like growing with the Kubernetes adoption, GitOps, this concept here. So before I was dedicated almost my whole career life to the open source, has done so much. And I also was the tech lead manager at Intuit, a big financial company at the US. So we were doing this VM migration to the Kubernetes on AWS. That was a journey. So we were able to manage about 300 clusters, 20,000 namespaces, and it's all powered by Argo CD. So we created Argo at Intuit, and we right now making Argo more like very widely adopted everywhere. So currently, I'm the CEO and co-founder for Acuity. So we're providing this enterprise software delivery platform for the people. And I'm very glad to see, for example, like we see a new data came out, the CNCF, and they did a survey. It's about like 70% of people already using Argo CD in production with their Kubernetes load. So it's kind of like great to see the Argo CD or GitOps concept is originally like a fancy thing, is becoming more like a mainstream right now. So,
awesome, thank you. And so I think regardless if you're in that 70% or not, the pace of software is continually increasing, and I think many of you are experiencing that challenge, is that we're pressured to do more and more and faster by our business stakeholders. And a lot of times that means providing additional levels of abstraction and simplicity for our application teams and developers, the idea of developer experience. In reality, that adds a lot of complexity and additional systems for our platform teams who are maintaining that centrally. And so this introduction of additional technologies and challenges for our teams is where I want to dig into our first area of conversation. So for our first real question, and we'll start with Yousef, what do you think is the primary challenge that you've tackled in expanding the adoption of Kubernetes or GitOps as you kind of approach this multi-cloud or multi-region architecture?
Yeah, so I've been working with Kubernetes for, I think, 10 years at this point, starting out helping Mozilla grow Firefox and their infrastructure through to Kubernetes, migrating a chunk of Ticketmaster's infrastructure into Kubernetes, and now with a smaller company at Cowbell. I think one of the big challenges is that Kubernetes itself is just a set of APIs, and that is both really simple and really complex at the same time. A lot of tools have kind of come up to help bridge the gap and the understanding around Kubernetes. They all focus on one very specific portion, be that Helm for templating your charts or deployments. And I think as a company, you end up with so many different tools that each have their own little silo. You end up tying those through with your pipeline, and that pipeline then becomes very fragile and prone to breaking. And I think that's one of the big issues I see with especially enterprise companies coming in a hybrid cloud model, not necessarily doing a full lifting up and putting into Kubernetes, but in that hybrid model. That tool set just becomes massive and ends up being tech debt in itself.
And Krzystof, how about you?
It's a very complex and complicated question that could take a lot of time, but I focus on the one topic. So developers usually really love simplicity. So they like YAML notation and already starting usually adoption with the open source Argo CD. But on company our size, where we deploy around the world, the standardization and consistency of environment is very important, because when we enable new region, when we expand to another land like Canada, France, Brazil, we want to enable this expansion very quickly and don't create any risk for the company. So we need to always stay compliant, and this creates a lot of overburden by development, by operations. And to reduce it, I need something where I can rely on. And the architecture of Acuity is unique in the form where I can really focus on that operative business and not thinking, will it work, how it work, what happens if we find vulnerabilities and so on. It's all, let's say, wrapped. And this wrapping creates me less headaches, so I have more time for standardizing it and automating it. So when we automate it, we have automatically simplified something, and we still are compliant. So that's, for me, are the two keys. Another one is observability. So usually DevOps is thinking about idea, implementation, and sometimes it's deployment. But for me, it's also important to have clear vision and post-market deployment. What happens over the time? What's deployed? By whom was it deployed? Is it still working? Is it still consistent? So that's, for me, are the top challenges.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point around the compliance side. Again, especially in hybrid cloud where you have on-prem and public cloud solutions, I think core tooling like Kubernetes and the ecosystem around it, it becomes a real pain to make sure you stay compliant as you're doing that shift, potentially from on-prem to public cloud or a hybrid cloud model.
Thank you all. And so I think, silos, application sprawl, technology sprawl, this idea of trying to get the visibility you need, how do you balance autonomy and control are probably challenges that resonate with a lot of you in the audience today. And I think for many of you, the implicit value of a good platform team might be obvious, but nonetheless, we're expected to justify that investment for the business, right? Why do these people exist? Why do these tools exist? And so for our next question, I'd like to dig into, as you kind of justify the investment for your teams, what are some of the key metrics that you use to track for your business stakeholders, and kind of what's the target that you're setting for that? We'll start with Yousef again.
Yeah, so a mentor of mine early in my career told me that customer happiness is the only thing that matters. That's obviously a very broad metric. I'm sure everyone here would love for their customers to be happy all the time, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. I think in the context of this, customer happiness is essentially the amount of deployments you're able to do whilst not impacting your customer service. And so for us, when we had our super fragile pipelines with custom scripts inside of them, shifting over to Acuity Argo CD, for instance, we were able to drop somewhere between 80 and 90% of our customer-facing incidents, purely just because our pipelines weren't breaking in the middle of complex deployments through multiple services. We were able to really codify through GitOps how we wanted our services to deploy, which are the dependencies between each other, and really able to make that a force multiplier for our engineers, where they felt confident they could ship both small and big changes kind of as they wish. It really reduced the risk of shipping software.
What about you, Krzystof?
I totally agree. So that are very good points. Reliability is for me also the key point. So when a developer, even on Friday evening, deploys something, he needs to be confident to do that. He needs to understand that even if something happens, he can roll it back very quickly and he can rely on that system. It will do what he needs and what's demand. So reliability is the key number one. Confidentially is something what is side effect of reliable system. Every action that we plan will focus on the action that we really plan and not the system that are supporting us. We need also to on and offboard people to specific teams, because we can challenge system when we look on the world by giving high access like administration permission to execute something, see something, but with zero trust policy and less privilege policies. We want to give this only for the specific period of time, so automation is another key point. And of course, DORA everywhere, time to market and so on. So that are three aspects.
Awesome, thank you both. Hong, you mentioned earlier at the start you had 10 years experience in this space. You've spoken to hundreds or thousands of customers, I'm sure. Is those set of challenges and kind of metrics consistent with your experience talking with these different customers?
Yeah, I mean, they are on the frontier of adopting the Kubernetes in the large scale, and I think definitely it's resonated with me very well. But to be honest, I think it's way better now, because 10 years ago, Kubernetes was not even stable. So I'm fighting with pod is stuck in the terminating stage, and I don't know what to do with it. And it has a bad storage driver. But right now, actually, I'm here Yousef is from the financial industry, and Krzystof is from the healthcare industry. I think that's kind of means a lot. It means it's getting into more like a highly regulated industry, and it's kind of very possible to adopt in a large scale. I think Kubernetes is already reaching to a relatively mature state, because I see it could be powering small business to ranging to a multi-billion enterprise. The Kubernetes can do it. So I'm not saying that it's easy, because they're still so flexible, there are so many tunable, there are so many add-ons that you want to make it to be working for you. So the challenge is there. However, I do think it's way better now. I'm very optimistic, and I think this is more like we are entering this long tail adoption phase right now. If I may to add in one more challenge in my mind is, I keep hearing this complaint about abstraction. Kubernetes is very flexible, you can do almost everything with it. And there is this constant fight is, do you give your developer Kubernetes, or do you abstract it away from them? I think this is a constant fight. There's no best answer there. And but I would say, I would step back to here is, I think no matter what, Argo CD or GitOps still very meaningful, because Argo CD, for example, providing a really great UI. So even you don't giving them the full cluster access, at least the Argo CD gives them the insights to know what's going on. So they know the events, they know the logs, they know the manifest, they know the sync history. That is very helpful to enable the education and understanding about what's going on. So at least I see that is the must-have, but I do think that people go to a different direction in the end. which is fine. Yeah.
Yep, no, that's a great point. I think, finding those key metrics, you mentioned DORA, throughput, reliability, and then letting that drive the right level of abstraction you find for your teams, right? Making sure you reach those outcomes. We've got a tremendous amount of experience with the panelists here, and I think a key culture of DevOps, and actually a show like this in general, is sharing a lot of the knowledge and learning here. So for our next question, I would really love to dig into one key takeaway that you would share with this audience today, maybe something that surprised you about your journey, kind of adopting GitOps, Kubernetes in general. Again, what is that key message that you'd want to leave with folks walking away today? And we'll start with Yousef.
Yeah, so I've worked in small engineering organizations from, say, 10 people all the way up to engineering orgs that are 200 people. And I think for all of those different organizations, the requirements and the needs of the engineers and the businesses change, and they're always changing, not a surprise to many of you here. And I think back to the point you were saying is having that flexibility to work with how the organization works, I think is one of the biggest learnings I've had through my career. It's, for instance, I think for me, a lot of the time I've seen is engineers don't care about Kubernetes, they don't care about Amazon. They want to get their JIRA ticket done, they want to ship a product, and move on to the next thing. And so for somebody like me, it's about, okay, how do I enable them to do that without them having to go learn, potentially a whole different paradigm? And so I found that's much easier to do in small engineering orgs. Unless you're a particularly large engineering org where you will naturally have a lot of custom processes, I would say kind of just find a paradigm that's generally well accepted and stick to it. It may not be 100% for your organization, but it'll increase velocity much more than trying to build out a custom solution that almost works. So for instance, for us, it was going full in on Argo CD's paradigm, and actually Cargo, I think, is a bigger indicator of that, where we had no particular stance on how we want to do Docker image promotions. It's something we know we needed. It's not something where I thought I needed to spend much time on it. That's not going to drive business value, me figuring out how you push containers to different places. And so getting in something like Cargo, where I can go, okay, they have a way of doing this, I'm just going to go with that. And for us, through our POC, it's worked really well. Developers were able to really understand it. There's clear documentation on it. I don't have to go spend my time teaching everyone else how to do this very specific niche thing. So I think that's my biggest takeaway is there are paradigms out there. Not everything you have to reinvent the wheel for until you get to a certain size.
Awesome. How about you, Krzystof?
For me, the biggest surprise was transparency. That is necessary for the business. This is very transitive topic because developers in early stages, they need to have might and power. So they need to do everything and directly on the target destination clusters. This is, let's say, the demand, and this is the option how the environment can be implemented, how we invent change. But over the time, we need to distribute the ownerships. So we need to split them, take something away. And Kubernetes itself is also a living system. It's changing, it's upgraded. Some policies that were working in 120x doesn't work in 1.3x. So everything is changing, and those changes distributed in matrix organization are a hard topic. So it's not only GitOps that solves it, but the option to design airbag, like have a clear role matrix, have options to design this in all of the systems, where this transparency can be transited from one to another team and still enable them, but close us from the dark, vulnerable world. And this creates velocity, because if we standardize something, if we have options for the playground, sandbox, and we have some secure layers for the production, then we have velocity that company on the big size needs. And I am talking about thousands of developers and hundreds of clusters and across around the world. So this is very important topic. And knowledge exchange. This is really very important topic. to work with the partners that have heavily developed documentation, they are well certificated, and if there are vulnerabilities, that the reaction time is very low, so you are staying safe.
Awesome, thank you. One thing that strikes me across both those comments is I think a lot of application teams, developers initially, they say I want power, I want control, I want access, but that's the desire, and actually the underlying intention behind that desire is I want it to work, and I think I'm the best person to figure that out. And so if we can find those standardized ways to pave paths and make it easy for them, they'll actually be satisfied with that result. It's when we put friction in front of them that they decide I need to figure this out all on my own. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and so panelists, I'd like you all to pull out your crystal balls. We're here again in the year 2030, and we're talking about the evolution of GitOps across the industry. What has been the single largest change or practice or evolution that you've seen around the practice of GitOps and deploying software in general? We'll go ahead and start with Yousef again.
So it's hard not to mention AI. Everyone's mentioning AI. I'm sure you're all sick of hearing about AI. But of course, I think it is an area that is going to impact DevOps significantly, and I think potentially more than some of the other areas in the tech space. I know the Acuity guys have come out with Acuity Intelligence, which adds some incident response and chatbot features into Argo CD itself. And I definitely see those kind of tools kind of coming into play here where, for instance, with Acuity Intelligence, one of the most just, oh my God, that's amazing moments was being able to write incident runbooks in plain English. All of a sudden, that doesn't become a DevOps problem, and that doesn't become an engineering problem. That kind of shifts left into product. The folks who are closest to the customers who really understand the issues, assuming you have the correct metrics involved, you can really get that feedback loop really, really tight by being able to just write plain English runbooks based on those metrics. And I see a future where it's all kind of shifted left, where you're going into something like cargo and deployments, where instead of it having to be fragile as code pipelines, that is something product managers are really cycle. Well, why don't they manage the technical side of it too? If they can essentially be able to control the pipelines and change the pipelines without having a huge engineering cost involved with that, they can do promotions, rollbacks, all of that stuff without ever having to get engineering involved. And I think that is probably going to be a huge space that a lot of DevOps companies are going to try and tap into.
Excellent. How about you, Krzystof?
If I truly knew what happened in the future, probably I would be a millionaire sitting in the investor board. But I think the challenge with AI is if you don't use AI, your company is in big danger. So you should start it, definitely. But it needs to be remembered that AI is not only made to make something good. It supports the same way the people that want to do something bad. So I just have big hope that we will be able to close some stuff in AI, and it will not intend to help based on the playbooks where we write down what to do in what case, but it will be more intuitive, and it will see what happened in the future with our environment. So if we, for example, roll out something in the new region and we need new GPU graphic cards soon, then everyone who worked on that topic knows that it's very hard to order by big Google providers, cloud providers, sorry, graphic cards. It's very tough. So working actively, proactively with that and see that demand before we need that and applying some quotas and invoices and so on would be awesome. So I hope that in the future AI will not only react, but will be intuitive to react before we think we should.
Awesome, excellent. Hong, really quickly, we've got about 30 seconds left. What's your prediction?
Oh my God. I will still talk about GitOps a little bit. I cannot predict the future, but I think the GitOps still becoming mainstream to the essential. Why? If you guys already know, the software development is already being challenged by the AI. Like I see my friends at my like back my office, like they are starting using the AI, doing more development in day-to-day basis. I think next thing is about the SDLC, the whole software development lifecycle. So when you're doing the GitOps, what do you get more is about making things to be more safe, predictable, repeatable, and auditable. And it's also a very strong contract between you as a human and the infrastructure is, hey, here's what I want. And here the infrastructure behave and give what you want. But the same thing will be a strong contract between the AI and also the infrastructure. So what I'm seeing that is in the AI era, I think the GitOps is becoming more like foundational, is how you automate your whole SDLC, is everything will be code, everything will be declarative, and everything will be managed in that way. So I will pause there. But things will keep changing, like AI is changing every 3 months. Yeah. So I think it's kind of like moving very fast. So like we have to be part of the journey there.
Awesome. I love that perspective from all of you, and I know it is difficult to predict the future, so I appreciate you playing along with that. To everyone in our audience, I just want to share our thanks for attending today. We've only scratched the surface with this conversation. Obviously, we can go much deeper. I would encourage you to find Krzystof and Yousef. They'll be around the conference today, so look for them. I'm sure they would appreciate you grabbing them for a chat. Hong and myself will also be over at the Acuity booth, which is basically at the opposite side of the hall. You can find us down there. If you want to learn more about the Acuity platform, Argo CD, Cargo, or have the conversation more generally, we'd look forward to that as well. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.